question with Mr. Engel and then go to the right and work our way around, and I'll move it around after that. Are you all ready? Okay. Question number one, it has two parts. It's one you probably heard before, I'm sure you have. Number one, part A, what is your position on the biomass plant? Part B, what do you see as the fiscal consequences of the decision to build the plant? So, what's your take on it? What's it going to cost us? Mr. Engel.
I'm glad you asked, because we haven't really had a chance to discuss this topic.
Really?
My position on the biomass plant is, I think we made some mistakes with this contract. I'm not an engineer, I'm not an environmental guru. I've spent most of my life in power generation. I've worked in power plants, I said pretty much most of my adult life. My biggest concern with this was kind of the way it came about. Like, I'm very worried about government that is not in the sunshine. I think even if you've got guys that are doing, even if you are acting like on your best intentions and everything else, when information is kept from the public, it makes things look shady, it really damages public trust in government, it causes a lot of problems, and I think that this is such a divisive and contentious issue right now, because the time when we should have been having these discussions was before the decision was made. We should have been looking at this contract after the contract was finished, before it was voted on. That's when the public should have looked at this, that's when problems should have been brought up, that's when we should have found answers to all these questions. I think the fiscal impact, at least immediately, is going to be pretty big and felt strongest by those that can least afford it. If you look at property cost or power costs, they affect east side poor houses much, much more than they do other houses. So I think the fiscal responsibility is mostly going to be borne by, those that can least afford to carry that load.
Ms. Lutz.
The biomass plant is in the ground. That's one problem. Because for those people who are for it, they're happy. For those people who are against it, it's in the ground. So we still haven't gotten anywhere. Whether it was right to begin with, it's a reality. Would I have signed that contract? In no way. I would not have obligated this community to a plant that's twice the size it needs to be, if biomass is the exact way we need to go. I would have had an out clause, because as an international negotiator of contracts, you have to have an out clause. We have a situation where it was voted by our Public Service Commission, of which Mr. Scott was a former commissioner and voted for it, and now is voting against it. So I think that what's happening is we do have different opinions about things, and your opinion can change. Because as we know, the environment, and we're learning more and more, and we're learning, what things are better for us and what things are not better for us. So I would say that since it's in the ground, I would like to have much more information on, is it the best thing? And second of all, if it's not, then what's it going to cost us to get out of it?
Mr. Fallow, and just to remind the candidates, we do want to focus also on the fiscal consequences issue. Mr. Fallow.
I agree with a lot was said, so I won't repeat it. I think the consequences, I'd like to hit on the consequences, because I don't know if we can get out of this unless it goes to the courts. I don't think the attorneys can fight it. I think it has to go to the courts, because I agree that that is not what my understanding was, that the commissioners wanted as a contract. Mr. Donovan said that he wanted the kick-out clause and when it was signed, so there's a lot of discrepancy on that. I think the courts have to make the decision. The problem that I see that really scares me more than anything, we're talking about $10 per person, but how much are we talking about commercial property? Your Publix, all of your big companies that use tons of electricity. What's going to cost, how many jobs is that going to cost the city of Gainesville, because these young people or anybody won't be hired because they have to cut somewhere, and they're not going to cut electricity, because if public cuts electricity, guess what? We're going to have lousy meat and everything else, because it's not going to work right. So I think the consequences are unseen, but it scares me because of what I see will be less jobs for people, and the commercial businesses are going to continue to do what they have to do to provide services for us, but they will not be hiring. So So that's what scares me. Thank you.
Mr. Poe?
Thank you. Absolutely support the Gainesville Renewable Energy Center. It's a great source of clean, sustainable, renewable energy. And it's not just me that believes that. It's Oak Ridge National Laboratory. It's NASA. It's the Union of Concerned Scientists. And it's the Environmental Protection Agency who just a couple days ago defined biomass as a renewable energy source. The fiscal consequences is that it is the best financial option for the ratepayers of the citizens of Gainesville when you look at all the alternatives. And one of the alternatives is not nothing. So you either have to give money to Progress Energy to supply our future energy needs. You have to use natural gas, which is incredibly volatile and will become increasingly so with the added scrutiny being put on the natural gas industry due to the fracking extraction processes that are going on. And coal is, of course, not an option, nor should it be, because that's an archaic form of producing energy. So, this also will create jobs. An independent economic analysis by an economist at Florida State University just showed that there will be 150 direct jobs created from the Gainesville Renewable Energy Center and 700 indirect jobs as a result as well. And so this is an economic benefit for the community. It is the least exposure for ratepayers. And it's the best environmental solution we have for our future energy needs. Thanks.
Mr. Selwyn?
Hi, Richard Selwack. The biomass plant, I'm against it, and because there's no future need. And I'm sure Mr. Scott will elaborate on the no future need. It's going to suck up our water, burn our trees. Biomass can mean anything. Sewer sludge, car tires, dead chicken, bird's nest, municipal garbage. There was no government in the sunshine when it came to the contract. The contract was redacted, information was redacted, and there was no buyout clause. I talked earlier about championing an environmental policy. There was no environmental impact statements done on this project. They should have been done first, so we know how this project will affect people, wildlife, the aquifer, and our area. They gave no value to water, and currently we're having drought conditions. As far as an economic impact, I'm hearing new figures of the average utility bill is going to go up $30, even $50. We should have talked about the alternatives, such as natural gas, solar, or conservation. For me in the pawn shop business, you know, it's going to be good for me because most of my customers who come in are coming in to borrow money and pawning items to pay their utility bill. It's only going to get worse. Thank you.
Good evening, Nathan Scott. With respect to the Biomass project is a $3.1 billion financial disaster of the City Commission's own making. Simply put, it's the most fiscally irresponsible decision the city has ever made. The issue with the financial aspect is articulated on the poster board at the back. It is $102.5 million a year annual financial cash payment obligation. If we want to break that down and prorate it and socialize the costs across all the GRU ratepayers, it's over $46 a month in property taxes. So this notion that the bill is going to be $10 a month for GRU, that's nonsense, okay? The bottom line is, it is a minimum, best case scenario, $10.56 a month per 1,000 kWh. It is the most expensive economic development tax on GRU ratepayers could ever happen. But the truth of the matter is, with respect to the Florida Public Service Commission, the record consistently reflects that I stated, as did the Commission, that the biomass project was fiscally irresponsible. The PSC told them it was a bad idea. It's articulated in the public records, the Commission order, the thousands of pages of transcripts. What did the City Commission do? They ignored it. The text of the order says, if the financial assumptions or assumptions associated with this project do not come to fruition, it's incumbent upon the City Commission to respond accordingly. The City Commission, including my opponent Lauren Poe, is in a state of denial on that issue. It's a tremendous risk for ratepayers speculating with ratepayer money. The economics, again, none of the assumptions that GRU presented to the public came true. That's the problem. There's no back-out clause. Thank you.
Mark Vensky. My statement that will appear in the Tuesday or Wednesday issue of the Independent Florida Alligator succinctly summarizes my thoughts on the biomass plant. I'll try to represent them here. My position, this happens to be the #1 priority of my governance objectives, and that is to thoroughly and publicly scrutinize the plant, get community-wide support for any change that is indicated by